Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. I'm just doing a reaction to Tottenham's excellent 3-0 win at Everton earlier today, which continued their amazing away form under Thomas Frank and sent them up to third in the Premier League. I would say that it was quite a big win for Thomas Frank in a way, even though it's early days. I think because some of the performances haven't exactly caught the imagination from an attacking perspective, and you could argue that this came into it here as well, but you cannot argue with the result. Um, that he sort of needed this after the Monaco game. They got a draw, but that was largely down to the brick wall that was Guglielmo Vicario, who once again had a very good game in the second half here. But then if you add that to the Villa home defeat, the poor Wolves draw at home, which was very close to being another loss at home, and the Bodo Glimt game, which was again a bit of a get out of jail situation. I think some fans have been a bit frustrated with the way the team have played, particularly from an attacking perspective in recent games. So to go and win and be the first team to win at the Hill Dickinson Stadium at Everton, David Moyes' Everton, no less, who are normally quite a tough cookie to crack. I feel like it is a result, maybe less than the performance, the result that really is a big one for Frankie, and once again gives him a bit of a platform on which to build from here. They were in open play. I can't say they were much better than Everton. If anything, Everton maybe had the better of the chances, although they were losing at the time, really. So it was kind of on them to go and make things happen. But it was obviously set pieces that were the key. And the game has changed so much. If ever you wanted a Premier League game to sum up how much things have changed in England's top flight to the point where there is an obsession with set pieces, it was this one. Spurs scored from two corners in the first half, both through Micky van der Ven. Everton also had a goal ruled out from a corner, which Jake O'Brien headed home. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall's corner, that was at 1-0, and there was a bit of confusion at first over whether this goal should have been ruled out or not. But I think eventually they got to the right decision because Iliman and Dye in particular, and Jack Grealish, to be honest, who were both effectively putting off Vicario, were both in offside positions. So along with the VAR, Craig Pawson, the referee, probably came to the right decision, even though he really felt for him as he had to announce it on the loudspeaker on the pitch, because obviously the Everton fans were not happy. But I think it was the right decision. But even that chance, that big chance that Everton had, came through a set piece, and it's amazing, really. The statistics: 19% of goals scored in the Premier League this season have come from corners. Spurs really are making the most of it. I mean, Thomas Frank is a man of details, a man of marginal gains. There'll be no stone that he doesn't unearth to try and gain an advantage, and very much set pieces come into that. His predecessor, Ange Postecoglou, how much he really cared about set pieces is a matter of debate, but I don't think it was his highest priority. I think that's fair, and that is looking like a pretty poorly aged viewpoint, really, in the modern game. Just look at Arsenal, top of the league; they're the kings of it, and Spurs are very much not far off it. In fact, they're the best from a defensive point of view, set piece wise, and they're scoring a lot of goals from them, and they're really relishing it. It's a very impressive turnaround how Thomas Frank and Andreas Georgesson, his set piece coach, have managed to drill into the team so quickly this to become such a threat from set pieces. So we might start with the two goals that Van der Ven scored, which were effectively the match winners. Yes, Pat Matassar scored right towards the end of the game, but by then the game was really gone. So it really was down to Van der Ven scoring his fourth and fifth goals of the season already. Amazing turnaround. Although maybe not so amazing, given he has always been a threat from an attacking point of view, from a centre back, whether it be with his feet, with his pace, or more than anything with his head. In fact, that's actually what Thomas Frank wanted more from him, because he knows how good he can be from his head, from set pieces. And with the way that the game is becoming more and more, particularly with Tottenham, around set pieces, it's no surprise to see defenders scoring more goals. Albeit he was the first defender for Tottenham to score twice in one Premier League game, since 2013 when Jan Vertonghen did it. But both goals were clever moves, clever set-piece routines that I'm sure Georgesson could take a lot of credit for. If in the background you can hear my dog, that's what that is, rolling around. After being on holiday for weeks, I haven't seen him for a while, so that's what that noise is. If you wouldn't mind, Dylan, if you could just be quiet for a minute, I'm trying to record a video. Anyway. Micky van der Ven. So the first goal comes in from a fantastic corner from Mohamed Kudus, right to the far post, where Bentancur does brilliantly. He peels off to the back post, and I think this was intentional. He effectively shoulders it back across goal, which, if it was intentional, and it was a really clever skill. And there's Van de Ven right there to head in. He can't miss for the first goal. The second one was more about Van de Ven's movement, I would say, and also an even better delivery from Pedro Porro from the other side. An in-swinger this time, an absolute bullet of delivery, curling in. But Van de Ven does well to sneak past, I think it was O'Brien, get in front of Pickford, Jordan Pickford, the England goalkeeper. Yeah, it gives him a little push, but not one that's too strong that it's a foul, and Pickford's just not strong enough. He basically bullies him in the air, and then he's there to head home for his second goal. And that really was the story of the game. And that's what David Moyes said afterwards, that his team were just undone by set pieces. But you should not underestimate what an achievement that was, because Everton were the last Premier League team this season to concede from a set piece with that first Van de Ven goal, and then two come at once. I think City were also going into today the other team who hadn't conceded from a set piece, but they did at Villa, I think. So Everton, difficult to break down, particularly from set pieces. They're very good from set pieces. The fact that Tottenham scored twice should not be undervalued in what an achievement that was for Thomas Frank and his side. That obviously puts Van de Ven with 5 goals as Tottenham's top scorer. Now, I think that's huge credit to Van de Ven, to Andreas Georgsson, and the set piece side of things from Tottenham's perspective. It's a big plus. Having said that, I also feel like it does have the flip side of revealing how their lack of a cutting edge from an attacking perspective, particularly in open play. They're not scoring enough goals really on that perspective. I think that's why they're struggling at home. They're struggling to create chances. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, we can talk about a couple of players actually here, but let's talk about the system. So one of the things I like about Thomas Frank is how he seems to adapt his tactics and his formations quite a lot. Maybe more his tactics and his formations, although here it was a formational tweak, depending on whoever he's going to, whoever the team are facing, rather than just going with the same way every time. We've seen him mix it up against PSG. Burnley, I think there's a lot more crosses, even though he's a manager who's gone on record saying how much he really values crosses for his team. But in that game in particular, there was a lot of that. And there have been other examples of him going for different techniques throughout his time at Spurs. And here he made a formational tweak, which saw Brennan Johnson, the top scorer of last season, I think with 18 goals, and scored that famous winner in the Europa League final. There he is, right on the front of my book, right there, scoring the goal along with Sonny holding the trophy. He has been the man left out generally under Thomas Frank. And I don't think many Spurs fans would be arguing with it, because we all have seen that he's better off the right. He doesn't really seem to fit off the left as much. And on the right, you can't drop Mohamed Kudus. So what did Thomas Frank do here to bring Brennan Johnson back in? Basically played them both there. Kudus was effectively more of a number 10, but him and Johnson playing wide right, did interchange at times. Kudus, particularly out of position, was kind of pushing forward along with Kolo Muani, who I'll come on to it in a second, because it was his first starts for Tottenham, with Xavi Simons playing more off the left. But there were times where Simons and Kudus were kind of playing more as number 10s, with obviously that pivot of Bentancur and Paulinho, the one that I think some Spurs fans are finding a bit too not lacking creativity and a bit negative at times. But clearly Thomas Frank is wedded to that too. We'll come on to that again later, how much he seems to be a big fan of those two playing there. And it worked at times. Spence on the left back was very, very wide. Porro at times was quite tucked in. Spence offering the width. Did it work? Let's be honest, this game was more about set pieces, but it was interesting to see him try it. I still feel like Johnson didn't really get much of the ball throughout the game, wasn't really that involved. He was worthy of his start, but I don't think he really did enough to sort of ensure that he definitely has to start the next game. And still, Kudus, when he got on the ball, I felt looked often Spurs' most dangerous player going forward. Xavi Simons, I have to say, I know it's early days and it's been, a couple of months now, and Spurs' whole attack looks very short of a fit central striker who can hold the ball up, and maybe that'll be a game changer when Solanke's finally fit or Mawani is up to fitness. But I know he's adapting to a new league, and you can look at Florian Wirtz, who's clearly a quality player struggling at Liverpool. But I haven't really seen much at all from Xavi Simons right now to really justify what they've done so far to spend 51 million on him. I think his stats before the game were pretty terrible, to be honest. The one assist, which was that goal, that assist at West Ham, but the lack of chance, 6 chances created, I think it was, only 5 touches in the opposing box. Yes, he's been playing out of position, often played out wide left, but more than often than not, it's when he gets getting the ball, and there's examples of this in this game. He just made mistakes. There was one bit where there was a really clever flick around the corner from Muani, pretty much the only moment from Muani that really stood out, which put Spurs sort of on a transition really quickly going through the middle, had a great chance just to lay in Spence, and he got his pass all wrong. And there were a few other occasions of that. And you could say, look, he just made an error. They're not major deals. Once he sort of irons that out, those mistakes out, it'll make a big difference quite quickly. And I do believe that, but at the same time, there's this carelessness about his game at times. That's not the first time we've seen things like that. West Ham, the game where he did get an assist, there was sort of passes out of play at times, and I don't know. I haven't really seen anything so far from Xavi Simons to really justify him being Spurs' chief creator going forward. But look, again, it's early days. Spurs are generally getting the results, but I do feel to a certain extent for Thomas Frank when it comes to the criticism about his team from attacking point of view, when his chief creator, when he has been given the chance to play in that role, is just not performing well enough yet. Now, again, early days, maybe things will get better. I imagine they will. He will play better going forward once he adapts more to it. But if he were playing at a higher level, if he'd adapted quicker, like I know he's a different kind of player, but Nick Voltemada's come from the same league and has adapted really well to Newcastle, albeit going into a Newcastle team that are very settled in the way they play, then that might have had a big difference on Spurs' attacking output so far this season. So I think it's all on Xavi Simons at the moment to really justify why he's been brought in as Tottenham's sort of main creator with Maddison injured. But again, it was a pretty underwhelming performance from him, I have to say. I didn't think he was very good today. Muani, like I say, first start for Tottenham. First start in a long time, really. He's a player who's had a lack of minutes at PSG, come to Spurs, then got that dead leg inflicted by Pat Matasar in training, which went on for a long time. Has had, I think it was 54 minutes of action before today in 3 sub-appearances. Was a bit of a surprise starter over Richarlison. I thought he did okay, pretty good. He was quite mobile. Held the ball up okay at times. He only lasted an hour before Richarlison came off, but just really good to see him in the team, to be honest, because Spurs are so lacking at centre forward. Really, I don't think Richarlison, over the course of this period where he has played, he doesn't really look like the long time, first choice answer. He can offer things as a sort of backup striker. I still think he's probably better off the wide left, really, personally. And he obviously got an assist today as well, coming off the bench. But if you're going to hang your hat on just him, I don't think he's really good enough for a Champions League team. Matisse Tell, arguably the same, and definitely at this stage of his career, he's very young. Even though he's done better of late, they cannot get Dominic Solanke back quick enough. But I thought Muani did okay, did pretty well. But then after that, really, so it's 2-0 going into half-time. Obviously, that second goal, which happened deep into stoppage time, was huge from Spurs' perspective. And then after that, it felt like it wasn't exactly backs to the wall from Spurs' perspective, but it was on Everton to try and make things happen. And I thought Kevin Danso, and particularly Micky van de Ven, Micky van de Ven is obviously the player of the match, but Kevin Danso, bear in mind, he's stepping in as the backup to Romero. It's not easy all the time to play that third choice defender who doesn't always get to play. I thought he was pretty Herculean at times with the way he defended. And then obviously adds that long throw as well, which we saw one particular very impressive sort of bullet-like delivery, I think, in the first half from Danso. So he offers that as well. But the other one who really stands out has to be Guillermo Vicario after his performance in Monaco. Been a lot of sort of criticism of him of late, but that performance was fantastic at Monaco. And then 2 really, really good saves in the second half to keep Everton at bay. First one is a Beto overhead kick. Wasn't the most powerful of overhead kicks. If he hit it harder, Vicario wouldn't have got a chance, but it's still a really good reaction stop to get the power on it to stop it from going in from Vicario's perspective. And then also later on, maybe even better, him and Ndiaye, who I thought was very good. Again, he's a really good player. Ndiaye. If Spurs are ever looking for a wide player, I think he'd be a decent signing. Although Everton, no doubt, would want a big fee for him if they were to let him go. Has this shot which takes a couple of deflections, one off Danzo, and the way Vicario adjusted his body to sort of push it wide was very impressive. I think the replay really showed what a good, an impressive save that was. So all in all, another sort of solid, if safe, performance in open play where Spurs aren't exactly the most ambitious in the way they play, but then again, they're playing away at Everton, who haven't lost at their new stadium. They're a good side. You cannot go in hell for leather. Just think of how Spurs were last season in this game, albeit at Goodison Park. They were 3-0 down at halftime. I genuinely thought that Ange Postecoglou at that point might even get sacked if they'd gone on to lose sort of 5-0. They got absolutely battered by an Everton team, very much out of form at that time. There wasn't any of that in this game. Spurs a lot more resolute, a lot more dependable defensively, much more of a serious side in that sense. But they still feel like they're not that enjoyable to watch at the moment from an attacking point of view. They're not that easy on the eye. And that is something that I think Thomas Frank, in the way he plays, I don't think they'll ever be really, really thrilling. I suppose when you look at Brentford at their best under Frank, it was very much sort of back to front, but in a really, really positive, attacking, exciting way with headlights of Mbeumo running through, Ivan Toney holding the ball up. That it was thrilling, but it was quite direct. And so there is the sort of future of that being a possibility at Spurs when they get their best attacking players back fit and all gelled together and sort of all up to speed with his approach. But I don't think it's ever going to be the kind of incisive attacking play that Ange is best we saw and other managers over in the history in Spurs' past we've seen as well. That doesn't mean it's not going to be way more effective going forward and might deliver better results. That remains to be seen. But obviously, it's been a good start to the season. Just mentioned that last goal from Pape Sarr, clever, unselfish bit of play from Richarlison, heading back across Porro's cross, and Sarr heads home. And it's interesting with Sarr because he started off the season Spurs' best player probably in pre-season, had a really good start, and now he can't really get a game or at least get a start. And part of the problem is I think Paulinho and Bentancur seem to be Frank's sort of go-to pivot in midfield, leaving one place ahead of that. And that is probably where Xavi Simons is due to play when he's really playing at his best. And if it's not him and it's not Kudus, then it's Lucas Bergvall. Sarr is sort of quite far down the pecking order on that front. So that's why I feel like it's a bit tricky at the moment to see where Sarr fits in with his energy. He's still not quite sure what kind of midfielder he is as well. I think he's a very effective player, a great squad player to have, but it feels like from what we saw at the start of the season, he's got the potential to be more than that. I just don't quite know where he's going to fit into Frank's system to be able to be given the chance where he can get regular game time to really prove himself to be a sort of regular starter. But hey, there are loads of matches this season. Obviously, they've got Newcastle in the Cup coming up, Champions League, other cup games, Premier League. There are loads of matches. I'm sure there'll be opportunities for him. So let's finally look at some of the comments that Frank's said after the game and sort of dive down into them a little bit to see how he assessed the game and what we can take from it to see how Spurs might carry on in this way going forward. So he said the first half was really good. Second half was more of a dogfight. Bentancur and Paulinho, he said, were fantastic. Again, underlining how I feel like he thinks that sort of fulcrum of those two players who are experienced, dogged midfielders. Bentancur is probably more technically better than Paulinho, and I feel like he could be doing more to take games by the scruff of their neck. Paulinho is such a great sort of defensive midfielder with his tackles. It just feels like those two have got that one locked down there, which does sort of indicate where the other midfielders fit into the pecking order and in the midfield. He also said he challenged Van de Ven to score more headers this season. I think that's something he said before. I feel like he might have said that at West Ham, actually, when I think he scored in that game. But he's now got obviously five goals. He talked about set pieces and how things have changed with set pieces in the last couple of years. He was talking about how at Brentford, they focused very heavily on it, and then they started noticing the big boys like Arsenal, obviously Liverpool, other teams doing the same, and that's what's caused this big shift in the last couple of years to very much set pieces being a huge thing. In a way, he sparked it with his Brentford team, inspiring some of those other sides, the bigger sides, which has then had a knock-on effect to all these other sides. He talks about clean sheet mentality, to get that clean sheet, which takes me right back to the first game of his tenure at Reading in pre-season, where they won 2-0. They scored 2 goals from set pieces and kept a clean sheet. And that was what all he was raving about after the game, was the clean sheet, was the set pieces. And I think a big part of that is because of where Spurs came from last season. They couldn't stop conceding goals. They didn't score anywhere near enough goals from set pieces under Ange. So that was something that he earmarked very early, Thomas Frank. But you can see it being carried through consistently. And that's where we're at still. And that's how they won this game today. And then he was asked briefly about the home form and how they can basically take what they're doing away from home and put it into performances at home where they're going to start winning matches. Obviously, the big difference at home is they're more expected to take the game to the opposition. It's harder to just rely on being defensively solid and set pieces. I mean, yes, it can work to a certain extent, but I think there's more of an expectation from the fans, particularly when you're playing at home to the likes of Wolves, to break them down and show more flair and creativity. And he basically just said, we need to add layers to our home form, which is quite a vague term. It doesn't really delve into anything there. Add layers. I don't really know quite what that means. I suppose he's talking about the idea that a team sort of gets more and more comfortable with his way of playing. And then as the attacking four, which he's often talked about, become more familiar with each other, then it'll, there'll be more entertaining football served up and more chances created. I suppose from Xavi Simons' point of view, just back to him, he was getting some good positions, if you're being kind. And if he can start cutting out the sort of silly errors and then start building on those and making some of these key passes, the composure that he's shown in other games, starts to bring that to the fore, then they could really have a player in their hands. But at the moment, like I said before, I think he's got it all to do to prove that. And that pretty much wraps it up, really. I think we should just, finally with this video, we should just talk about Andries Georgsson. Arguably Spurs' best signing in the summer. I mean, Mohamed Kudus is clearly that, and João Paulinho on the pitch, but Georgsson's made such an impact. I mean, who's to say that without him, Thomas Frank might not have had the similar kind of impact, but when you look at the turnaround and set pieces, both from defending them and attacking them, it's been chalk and cheese to last season. And the way they have mixed it up, almost like a chess match, has been very, very impressive. Different strategies to scoring these goals, and teams are really struggling to stop them. In the same way that we've seen with Arsenal the last couple of years, teams know it's coming, they can't stop it. What an asset to have! If Spurs can try and add to all this great base of being very, very solid from defensively, being excellent from set pieces, and bring a bit of flair, a bit more creativity at home, then they really could be a serious contender this season. But as of yet, we're still to be convinced from that style at home. But I think Spurs fans should just bask in the glory of 13 of their 17 points, I think it is, coming away from home. They're unbeaten, best record in the Premier League away from home. That is really impressive, and it's their second 3-0 victory on the road this season. Everton and West Ham. West Ham obviously look a shambles this season, but Everton, that is no mean feat to do that. So fair play to the team, and well played, Thomas Frank, Micky van de Ven, and Andries Georgsson. Cheers, guys. Let me know your thoughts.